Welcome back into Talking Fitchburg. Joined today from the Department of A Trade Consumer Protection. It's my friend Michael. He knows everything about PayPal, crypto, Venmo,
Ooh.
something.
I know about a hybrid of those and how they're using a scam, but I won't say I know everything.
No, okay.
Sorry.
That's maybe too good to be
Big
true.
disappointment.
Today we are going to talk about PayPal scams. So I mentioned all those different apps, but PayPal's it's interesting. It's sort of like the first big. To me, in my mind, in Jeremy's world, PayPal was like the first electronic out there payment system, and it didn't coincide with another big eBay. I think it was eBay, right? Weren't they hand in hand at one point and did all that? Nevertheless, I'm really taking us down a bad path. We're talking about yet another scam or things that are happening with the fake PayPal, scammers, I guess, so to speak. But nevertheless, when it comes to using these services and whatnot, it feels like everybody's using them. You kind of feel a little bit nervous, I think, sometimes using them because you're depending what you're doing, what you're buying, whatever you're doing it with. But this scam is tied to some cryptocurrency. When I feel like you hear that buzzword plus PayPal or a Venmo or any, pick your buzzword in your company.
Yeah.
It just feels like they do go hand in hand sometimes. So tell us what is new here in the world of PayPal and this fake scam. It's very interesting.
Well, what's new is the combination of the two. And so you mentioned earlier, there's so many different payment platforms that are out there, and as they become so mainstream, we get used to using them and they become commonplace and we start to trust them a little bit more. And conversely, we also now recognize that there are risks to everything that we do, right? Anything electronic brings a risk with it. So you then have to do that balance of, all right, well, if I do 1,000 good transactions and maybe one's at risk, odds are still in my favor. Cryptocurrency also has hit the mainstream and is being used both, fraudulently and legitimately as an investment tool. We're seeing cryptocurrency kind of infiltrating every single type of scam, and so it's no surprise that we're seeing it here with the PayPal invoice. And what's happening is, a traditional fake invoice scam, you would get it, but what they're doing is saying you made a cryptocurrency purchase. And the reason this one causes a little bit more pause is if you were to get an invoice for a new swimming pool, you would say, you know what, I realize I never bought a swimming pool. That's easy. But with cryptocurrency, it's plausible that you might think, well, somebody may have got my identity or got my account information about cryptocurrency. It makes you think this might be a little bit more real, which would then motivate you to reach out and verify the legitimacy of that purchase by responding to the invoice, which will have phone numbers, email addresses, which all look legitimate and of course are not.
So automatically here, I see and I hear you saying unwanted invoice comes in. Does it come in via email? Does it come in via text message? Is it coming all of those? How are people receiving these?
Most of the time it's an email. So you're getting an email. It'll have the attachment as a PDF in it that says, hey, here's an invoice for your recent purchase. We're going to look at that and say, hold on a second, I do have PayPal, but I didn't make that purchase. We're going to open it. We'll probably open that link. That brings with its risks as well. But we're talking really at this time of making sure when you're looking at that invoice and not responding to the phone numbers or the contact information within the invoice. If you do think there is an issue, that's okay. Just go ahead and reach out to PayPal directly. You probably have the app on your phone or your device, or maybe you can just do a quick internet search and get the legitimate phone number and call them and say, did I really make this purchase? And most of the time, if you don't recognize it and you've asked yourself, did I buy cryptocurrency? And you're saying, no, I didn't, you're going to find out it's fake. But it is, again, fighting the urge to respond to the contact information that's in that invoice.
Are you noticing that in the email line that it's saying because you can check, one of the things that I check for if I'm questioning an email, is it legit? First place I look is just in the email address, and it's oh my gosh, this is 254 Bozo Lane, and that's PayPal's somewhere in that 300 code.
Yeah.
Is that something you're seeing on this?
It's both. I guess I would say if the scammers are being lazy, they're going to do that. But now we've talked, in the past about spoofing, and spoofing is the ability to manipulate what you're seeing. And we talk about it a lot with phone numbers, and so that's why when you have the caller ID, you can't really trust the number. But the same thing with email addresses. They don't necessarily spoof them, so it's going to be identical. But let's just say the PayPal, instead of being PAP or PAYPAL, it's P @YPAL, and you glance at it and you're like, oh, okay, it looks legit. Or the L is a number 1. So, I mean, you really have to scrutinize it, but they're not quite as egregious anymore of seeing a string of 17 characters. You're like, well, PayPal's not emailing me from Gmail, right?
So we're kind of already, if you haven't tell, we're sort of breaking down some of the plays that identify this, but I like this one, and I've used it many times of saying is stop and think or stop and act, and you're right, you say this in a lot of different scams, but if you're suspicious of anything, taking that moment to stop and actually think about what are you going to do next? What is Michael? Michael should pop up in your head right at that moment. Like, Michael's going to be like, what, Jeremy? What do I do when I stop and think about this?
Well, what you're going to do is you're going to ask yourself, did I make this purchase? You know, and then you're going to ask yourself, all right, when's the last time I even used PayPal? You know, and did I get any notifications? Has my account been updated? What accounts are tied to it? But the key really is there's the pause, taking the time to ask yourself those questions and fighting the urge to believe what you see in front of you. You know, we a lot of, in our outreach presentations, we talk about respond, don't react. And that respond is that pause, that 10 seconds to allow logic and reason to kind of get back into your brain and say, all right, I know better. I remember hearing this. I remember reading this. Go ahead and give yourself the chance to fight it.
I think you're right. I think it seems silly at times to like, well, of course I'm going to stop and think about it, Michael. Well, we're really busy. There's a lot of distractions in this world. That we're getting spam, we're getting all of these things, and you wouldn't be here telling us about this if it wasn't being successful, which is really sad to say that it is being successful. I'm not shaming anybody that's had this happen to them, but it works. So if there was a takeaway today too, is it still works. You still might be like, an email scam? Are you sure, Michael?
Yeah. Two things you said there that are really, really important. The first is the email scam being successful. And what we've also noticed is the most basic approaches and inception points to scams like phishing, just tossing it out there and seeing email scams just going out there, text messages. We would think we've heard about them for so long they can't possibly work. They're still the most successful entry point to scams, just general phishing. Toss an email out there and see who responds. So that is, I think, a misconception. We think nobody falls for them anymore. The second one is you talked about, well, you don't want to shame anyone, and you certainly weren't doing that. But what I think was really important to emphasize is all the other things we have going on. Like if we're on our phone, we open this email, well, chances are somebody else is talking to me, or I'm waiting for my coffee, or I'm sitting and doing this. And so you're multitasking all the time. And you're going to look at that, and you might not have that pause. You might be thinking about something else and be like, oh, let me flag this to check later. And so because all those scenarios are happening, this is how it's becoming even easier for people to fall victim to them because they're not really able to pay attention because there's too many other things going on.
Man, we got to slow down.
You got to slow down.
We got to slow down. All right. Well, if you want to stay up on the latest and greatest scam protection, there's certainly a lot of resources on the website. But I encourage you to check that out because things do change. So you look at this one. I think I look at this one and say, well, it's PayPal. There's been a lot of PayPal scams for many, 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 many years. But even back to the basics, it's just one click of a new piece of this crypto. Just they rolled into. So It was PayPal first and just general scams. Now it's PayPal and crypto. And now it's going to be PayPal and whatever else comes up down the road. So continue to be educated on it. How can they do that through your website?
You can visit us at datcp.wi.gov. If you receive an email, get a phone call or text message, you just have a question or want to talk to someone, you can give our hotline a call at 1-800-422-7128. And in scenarios like this, if you have a PayPal invoice, you're not quite sure, just go to PayPal's website. All these businesses are doing a great job about self-identifying all the scams and the way that they're being manipulated. So visit that directly.
Yeah, I think you want to know what's going on and stay up in the latest and greatest. And that's why you tune in and watch these segments, because Michael's going to tell you everything you need to know.
I'm going to try.
Yeah, so you can stop and think and act. Thank you, Michael.
You got it.